everybody on YouTube, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Rachel, the Student Witch. How are you doing? I am doing great, other than, as you can see here, I have one of my two crutches, my muleta. I'll have it written here for you Anglo-speaking people out there, us English speakers. Muletas is how you say crutches, and I've been walking on crutches and with a boot for about 2 weeks now because I extended one of the ligaments in my ankle. I severely sprained my ankle and it's been a journey. What a way to get used to my time living here in Chile. What a welcome. But I'm here, I'm doing well. I hope you guys in the northern hemisphere are enjoying the beginning of autumn. Here down here in the southern hemisphere, we're enjoying the beginning of springtime, which I'll make a video about that here in a few weeks. But I'm principally here today to talk about books and reading. Specifically, I'm going to, as quickly as possible, I can get a little wordy, as the subscribers and regular viewers of my channel know. But I'm here today to give my thoughts, impressions. I hesitate to use the word review because I feel like if you watch a lot of BookTube videos like I do, and I recently discovered BookTube, it's like a whole new world for me. But it seems like people's reviews are very structured, and for this book in particular, I kind of want to go a little bit more on the personal route and my impressions and the journey that I went on with this book. For future book review videos, I might give a more kind of structured review and a star rating and that kind of thing, but for this review, I guess just a little sneak peek into what I'm going to say here in a few minutes about this book is I feel like I know myself better after reading this book than I did going into it. And that's probably the best compliment I can give a book. Especially this kind of like psychology, getting to know yourself, shadow worky exploration kind of book that this is. So I'm going to get into this here in a second, but I'm using this particular book review to kind of kick off a series of book reviews that I want to do more regularly on my channel, hopefully on a monthly basis. Eastern Body, Western Mind was the book that I read in August, and I know it's September 2nd. I'm a couple days late getting this out here, but life happened. I'm dealing with a fucked up ankle, so there you go. But I feel like the theme of getting back into reading and blockages to reading and establishing reading habits has been kind of a popular theme the last, I don't know, few months among the witchy pagany community. I've seen a few witchy pagany spiritual YouTube creators talk about it. I mean, of course, Kelly and Maddox being one of them. And I know that when I was watching those videos, it definitely sparked an interest in me and kind of rekindled the pleasure reading flame in me. And I realized that I have been struggling to establish a pleasure reading habit. And I say pleasure reading because I do a lot of reading for my research. I'm writing my PhD. I'm in a literature, culture, humanities kind of program that comes with a bunch of reading. So I am reading daily. Hundreds of pages a week, probably. But I kind of like to separate that, which I do find pleasure in. You know, that's why I do what I do, is because I love what I do. But I like to separate that from just me time, self-care time, pleasure reading. And so in an effort to try to commit to more self-care, just indulging in books just because I want to read them, not because I have to read them, and in order to invest more time in that, I try to make a very simple and easily completed commitment. And that commitment is to read one nonfiction book and one fiction book per month. And then for the nonfiction book, I will do a review of the book on my channel toward the end of that month, the designated month for that book. So I read this. Actually, my YouTube and subscribers and my Instagram followers voted for me to read this book, because during the last week of every month I've put up a poll. You probably saw that if you follow me regularly here, and I also put up a post on Instagram to allow my subscribers and followers to vote on what I'm going to read for the next month. So for August, you guys voted for Eastern Body, Western Mind, and for September, and actually today I'm going to start reading this, you guys voted for The Inward Arc, Healing and Psychotherapy and Spirituality by Frances Vaughn. So this is the book I'm reading in September, and I will have a review up at the end of the month for this book. And toward the end of the month, you'll see a poll come up on my YouTube Communities tab, and you'll see an Instagram post with a selection of books to vote on for October. So that's how this is working, just to give you guys a little bit more say in some of the content on my channel, get some more participation, more input, more recommendations. And of course, if in the comment section to in all of my videos, but especially the book review videos, please feel free to recommend books that spark your interest, especially, for example, Eastern Body, Western Mind has to do with the chakra system. If you know of a book that you loved about, more about the chakra system, please comment below. I'm always looking for more material and more books to read. So, without further ado, now that we're 6 minutes in, let's get to it. Like I said earlier, just a general overview of my impressions of this book and how important this was for me to read, particularly at the moment that I read it. I really do feel like I know myself better after reading this book, because this book is about that marriage that the author, Anodea Judith, makes or does between the chakra system and more Eastern spiritual philosophies and Western psychology, especially Western developmental psychology, like childhood development psychology. She marries those two systems, and she marries them so well. One of the things that I was kind of hesitant and unsure of going into reading this book was that marriage that she does, because she herself, as far as I can tell, I believe she herself is a Westerner. She lives in the United States, in Northern California. Let me just read a little bit of her little bio here on the back of the book. Anodea Judith is a leading authority in the integration of chakras and therapeutic issues. She is the author of the chakra classic, Wheels of Life. Let me know if any of y'all have read that, because I would love to read it if it's good. Along with several other books, audio courses, and the video, The Illuminated Chakras. She has a PhD in Health and Human Services and a master's in Clinical Psychology, and additional training in bioenergetics, trauma recovery, yoga therapy, and shamanism. She lives in Northern California and travels extensively with trainings and workshops. So that's her little blurb there. So she is academically trained in psychology, but she also has studied and immersed herself in things like yoga, in bioenergetics, whatever that might be. I imagine some sort of like energy healing kind of thing, shamanism, Jungian psychology, all that yummy stuff. And so like I was saying, I was kind of hesitant because there's a lot of issues with Westerners kind of cherry picking other people's spiritualities and spiritual modalities and practices, and that's one of the large problems that I see in the New Age movement. But I believe that she did it well here. She did it very well here. And her knowledge and study of these more Eastern modalities and spiritualities and stuff allowed her to better understand the West the Western mind, so to speak, and the issues that she calls out in and throughout the book. She calls out some of the issues and problems with Western philosophy, with its over-focus and over-emphasis on transcendence at the expense of appreciating and respecting the body and immanent physical existence. She dives deeply into the setbacks and the shortcomings of Western conceptions of relationships, heteronormative monogamy and how that's pushed onto everybody. I mean, these are my own terms. She doesn't quite word it that way, but I could tell where she was going with it. She talks about the shortcomings of some aspects of Western ideas regarding relationships and family, the body, and the larger implications of these shortcomings and how they negatively impact us and our personal psychologies, our personal mental health issues, and how they show up in these interpersonal traumas that a lot of us experience. And she, through the chakra system, gives us a roadmap to healing those traumas, to going on the path of individuation, on the path of healing. And so, in general, do I recommend this book? Absolutely, yes. I recommend this book. I really enjoyed it, and I did some intense, deep inner work. Let me show you in my witchy bullet journal / kind of just general journal, I wrote so many pages of notes, all of these pages of notes. And I wasn't taking notes trying to memorize her system or her definitions of things. I was taking self-reflexive notes. And so one thing I want to say before I kind of break down very quickly the structure of the book is that I believe that you can come at this book from one or two perspectives. You can read it more as a reference book, cover to cover, or just focusing on the specific chakra or chapters that you think are most pertinent, and you can just kind of go through the material and try to learn her system, or you can take it to very deep personal places. You can use this almost like a shadow work notebook as you're reading through the book and reflecting on the things that resonate with you, the specific traumas that she talks about, childhood and early adolescent traumas that she talked about that you maybe experienced yourself, and how that is affecting you psychologically, emotionally, physically even. And you really use this as a roadmap. A roadmap is like the best kind of analogy that I can come up with in this on the spot, really use this as a roadmap to help you guide your shadow work. And so for a lot of people, sometimes shadow work just comes up, like something triggers you, or some issue comes to light and you need to work on it on the spot. Other times, especially when you're doing really deep shadow work where you're revisiting those early childhood traumas and those intense moments and those shadows that have been buried for a long time, and you need to work on them, sometimes you need to kind of schedule that. And I know for a lot of you in the Northern Hemisphere, you're entering the dark half of the year, and a lot of witches and pagans and whatnot utilize that, the waning of the sun, so to speak, the darkening of the days as a journey into the darkness, into their own shadow, to do that kind of healing. So if you are going to come at this book as a roadmap to shadow work, I would suggest that you allocate and dedicate some time, set aside some time for it, because this actually brought up a lot of funky stuff, in such a good way though. Sometimes you need to go into the darkness and you need to explore those darker, difficult, traumatic even parts of our personal histories, because it's an integral part of our individuation. You know, we need to integrate the shadow. Not that the shadow is all bad and dark and evil, you know, mysterious and full of trauma. It's not. It's just whatever our conscious puts down and tries to keep out of our waking consciousness, you know. That is the shadow, and it can affect our behavior and whatnot. So it is important to become aware of it and aware of what's inside of it through self-reflection, and also by becoming aware of these things, we shed some light on these things and incorporate them into our sense of being, so that way the shadow doesn't negatively affect our behavior or guides our actions. Instead, it informs us and helps us to become more whole, more holistic in our understanding of who we are and what we want out of life, right? So I didn't really know what I was getting into going into this book, but then once I started reading the first chapter on the root chakra, I realized, oh, this is going to be a deep dive. This is going to be a deep journey, and I went on that journey for a whole month, and I got so many incredible insights, so many connections, like, oh, this is why I have issues with imposter syndrome. Oh, this dates back to when I was a teenager, when one of my parents said and did very hurtful things to me. This is why this is still an issue I struggle with. Oh, this actually goes back to my childhood. Or, oh, this behavior or thought pattern, this perfectionism actually dates back to this. Or, oh, I have issues with my root chakra because of actually generational trauma, the trauma that's been passed down through generations, through my family, where as children, my parents, their sense of safety felt threatened, and that's why I have so many conflicting issues or issues with my root chakra. Like, I was able to make so many connections, and it's actually really interesting that she uses the idea of the rainbow bridge. She talks about the chakra system as a rainbow bridge to help create these connections within us, to help us connect back with our body so that we're not in our head all the time, or to help us connect to these ideas, and even to help us connect with each other so that we stop thinking of everything in terms of black and white. That's one of the things she mentions in the introduction of the book, is the shortcomings of black and white kind of binary thinking, this or that, me or them, or us, the in-group and the out-group, and the shortcomings and sometimes even the violence and the emotional damage that can come from too much fixation on difference, too much fixation on either or. And how actually, just like the light spectrum has all these colors in it, you know, that the human eye can see at least. You know, the world isn't black and white, life isn't black and white. Why do we always try to reduce things to black and white? And so she uses this idea of the rainbow bridge that not just connects but unites the mind and the body and the environment, us and them. You know, what's within us and what's without us, what's as above, so below kind of thinking. And it's really, really beautiful. So, yeah, just really quickly, now that we're toward the end of this review, I definitely want to keep this 20 minutes or less, right? Let me just break down some of the key, most important information that I found in this book. Most important in that it's what I'm really going to take away, what I can remember from this book without having to refer to my notes, right? That's really the impactful stuff that just hit me. So structure-wise, there's an introduction and a conclusion, and between the introduction and conclusion, you have 7 chapters. There's a chapter for each chakra, and the introduction is vitally important. I feel like if you're going to jump around when you read this book, I think that's totally okay, and you can kind of focus on the chakra that you think you need to work on most in that moment. But I don't think, and I don't recommend that you skip the introduction, because the introduction has so much information in it. It's really where she lays the groundwork and really where she defines her terms, so you know where she's coming from. You know exactly how she is approaching the chakras, like what her approach is, what her definitions are, what her structure is, and really how she marries these two systems of the Eastern body and the Western mind. And some of the most important ideas, I feel, are these ideas of the demons. So each chakra, well, let me back up. Each chakra, according to her system, correlates with a specific stage of development, psychological development. For example, the root chakra correlates to from the time we're in the womb to our first year of life, and it's preoccupied with self-preservation. And then the sacral chakra is from 6 months to 2 years, and it's preoccupied with self-gratification. It's where we start to develop an idea that we have an emotional identity. We start to separate ourselves from our mother, from our principal caretaker, and realize that we are a separate being, and kind of start developing emotionally. Then the solar plexus is from 18 months to 4 years, and that's where we start to develop our egos, our egoic identity, and we're preoccupied with self-definition. And then the heart chakra is from 4 to 7 years, and that's where we start to think more about our relationship with others. So from ego identity to relationship identity, our persona, who are we in relation to these other people in our lives. And then the throat chakra is from 7 to 12 years, and that's where we're preoccupied with self-expression. It's actually the throat chakra that she associates with creativity, with the seat of self-expression and creativity. And then the third eye chakra is preoccupied with self-reflection, with archetypes, with symbolism. And then the crown chakra is into adulthood, and that's preoccupied with knowledge, and that includes spiritual knowledge and connection with something greater than ourselves. So that's kind of how she connects the chakra system with more Western psychology of childhood development or personal development, like stages of development. So if anybody's ever, taken an intro to psychology class, you're probably aware of, Freud, Jung, Piaget, like these types of figures that studied early childhood development. And so each of these chakras is also associated with a demon, what she calls a demon. Not because it's evil, just because it's something that might result from a trauma at different stages of our development that could negatively impact our overall well-being, especially in that chakra and what that chakra kind of governs in our development and in our being. So, for example, the first chakra the root chakra, preoccupied with our existence and our self-preservation and survival. If a fundamental demon of the root chakra is fear, and that is specifically fear of our sense of safety and well-being being under threat. And so a kind of a clear example of a trauma that would impact and cause this demon of fear in the root chakra would be abandonment. It would be not getting enough food when you were a baby, abandonment, neglect, those kinds of really intense kinds of traumas that can negatively impact the root chakra and for a long time cause issues with fear. So, each chakra has a different demon. So fear, moving up, right? Fear, guilt, shame, grief, lies, illusion, and attachment. But each chakra is associated with a right. And actually, this is one of the most important ideas that most heavily impacted me, was this idea that each chakra has like a human right attached to it. And one of the first notes I wrote as I was reading this book was, I need to defend my chakra rights as I would defend the human rights of myself and others, because these are fundamental rights that are necessary for a joyful life, for enjoyment, for happiness, for love, for being balanced and just overall well-being. And so I really like this idea of chakra rights, and you really need, through self-care, through what I like to call militant self-care, you need to defend these rights to keep things in balance and for your overall well-being and your self-love and self-care. So the root, starting at the root and going up, the root chakra is your right to be here. And I actually had a lot of issues with my root chakra, and I think I had a lot of these kinds of issues because of the trauma and neglect and stuff that my parents went through. So you not only need to look at your personal history, you need to look at your family history when you're doing this kind of deep shadow dive kind of work. Then sacral chakra is your right to feel, your right to explore these emotions and feel emotions and learn from them. Solar plexus, your right to act. And she talks a lot about power in this chapter and her definition of like a healthy sense of power, knowing that you have power within yourself and that you can exercise that power. Which one thing I really liked about that chapter, the solar plexus chapter, is how she pointed out that a Western idea of power, and some people almost think of the word power as a dirty or bad word, because we've been just polluted with this idea that power is synonymous with abuse or abusing power or exercising power over others. And she dispels that myth and says, like, no, you can have a healthy sense of power within yourself. That doesn't mean you abuse power and bully people or try to have power over others, right? It's power from within, which I really liked. And then the heart chakra is your right to love. Your throat chakra is your right to speak. The third eye is your right to see in relation to seeing the truth, right? And your crown chakra is your right to know. And so every chapter, or those are the ideas that most had the biggest impact on me from the introduction, and that's why I say it's really fundamental to read the introduction. But then every chapter after that focuses on each chakra, and she basically breaks down each chapter like this. So you have a general overview of that chakra, a general overview of what some of the issues related to that chakra would be. Then she talks about the traumas that can happen that negatively impact that chakra, and she includes examples from her therapeutic practice from her clients, of course without their names and stuff, as examples to help illustrate how these traumas negatively impacted these people with their specific chakra. And then she talks about what an excess of energy in that chakra would look like and why that isn't necessarily good, and how a deficiency in energy in that chakra would look like and how that's not good. And then in general she ends each chapter with a description of how you can heal each chakra and the character structure of that chakra. And this is something that I wasn't too hip on. I get where she's going. She kind of borrows an idea from several childhood development psychologists with character structures and how specific issues can shape your character. And she has specific definitions of these characters or personalities and what they would look like, where the general personality traits and deficiencies and issues that someone with that kind of character structure would have in relation to that chapter's chakra. I kind of took what I felt I resonated with and left the rest for that kind of section, but that section's only a few pages out of every chapter. And then, like I said, she ends each chapter with examples of how you can begin to work on healing that specific chakra and heal yourself. So yeah, I I found this book incredibly important and helpful, but also I do recommend, if you are going to use this as a tool for working on yourself and digging into some of those traumatic events in your past, or really working on healing, that you do set aside time to dedicate to reading in depth, the pertinent chakra chapters that are pertinent to you, and to take time taking self-reflexive notes. I mean, you can of course take notes like, making sure that you understand her definitions of things and her concepts and ideas, as if you were studying from a textbook, But I also recommend, or I found it really helpful to, anytime something that I read resonated with me or helped spark an idea or a thought, or reminded me of a memory from my childhood or adolescence, I would start kind of journaling about it as I was reading. I found that incredibly helpful and healing, so that's how I would recommend approaching this book. So, for all you guys out there, what do you think about this book? Have you read Eastern Body, Western Mind? Did you find it as helpful as I did? What are the things you didn't like about it so much, and what are the things that you loved about it? And do you have any recommendations for other chakra books? Please comment below. If you liked this review, and I kind of went in depth, but this book it's a doozy. It's really thick, so it deserves a good chunky review. Please like and subscribe and share this video, and until next time, many blessings. Bye. Happy reading.